From Studio 1A in Tampa, Florida, comes a talk show that really feels your pain and tells you like it is. We love America and all that freedom-loving Americans want to protect. Live from coast to coast and on your radio, it's For the People with Keith Alan.
We'll help you survive this thing called life. We're for the people. Whatever your source of stress or strife, for the people is there.
Hello, Mr. and Mrs. America. I am Keith Alan and proudly welcoming you to this last day of May's For the People. On this Wednesday, it is the 31st, and it's 2017. We got a great show lined up for you. Do you expect anything less? Of course not. Yesterday, something really incredible happened, and it was a rather big deal because it launched into outer space. If you haven't heard, this missile interceptor launched from Vandenberg Air Force Base out in California, and it was traveling more than 16,000 miles an hour to go about 250, 300 miles above the Earth to intercept an ICBM missile, kind of like the one that North Korea's building. Yeah, that one. And guess what? We did it. We did it. Yes, we did. And we did it with American pride, American technology, and ingenuity. And we don't just have one of these things, folks. We have many of these things all over the country. And they're going to be building more of them. Now, I was talking to some friends and an immediate friend shortly after this launch, and basically the consensus was that the government must have tested this thing before they went public with it, because they showed the launch of it in the public eye, and then today they released the great pictures from space imploding this ICBM. I mean, it was like a bullet. The way that the experts describe it is a bullet shooting a bullet down. I mean, such precision and at that rate of speed, it's unbelievable. But anyways, back to the conversation with this friend. They must have had a trial run, 1 or 2, 3 times, just to make sure they were able to do it. And they did it. And which sends a message, not just to the American people, but that more was a message for North Korea, Iran, Russia. Because a lot of these, by the way, are in Alaska. Not surprisingly, there's a lot of warheads that Russia has aimed towards us. Of course, we have a lot aimed towards them as well. But to be able to shoot these down, unbelievable. Technology seems to get better and better. And hopefully to God, they keep wraps on that technology. But they had guys with goggles and computers and some badass prowess to be able to, can I say that? I mean, there's nothing short of a miracle. I mean, to be able to do that kind of stuff. I mean, that stuff is, it's Star Wars kind of stuff that you would see in the movies. But here we are in the future, and to see it happen is unbelievable. One day we might have to actually really use this stuff. But it was a great demonstration of what we're able to do. And I was very happy that it was successful. And I hope they continue testing out the systems all over the country to keep us safe here, because that's priority. And the age that we live, you don't want anything exploding over our atmosphere, over North America or any part of America. Don't forget that book that I told you about, Ted Koppel, Lights Out. Well, we've talked about EMPs, and we've had guests on, and we've gone down that road several times, but we have to remind you, That is a possibility, one that the government's aware of, and a lot of smart people that study EMP implosion above the atmosphere would wipe out our power grid. Your cars would be useless. Your computers would be useless. Of course, if you are a survivalist, you might know that you can put stuff in a metal trash can with it covered up, and you can put your computers and cell phones and electronic devices in there, and guess what? It will continue to work. That's knowing something about survival and knowing something about EMPs. You have to plan for eventualities, folks. What did FEMA say? Plan for the worst, hope for the best. And that's really where it's at. You always have to have some kind of survival plan. Speaking of survival plans, we're supposed to have an above-average hurricane season. Did you hear that? At least for Florida, the East Coast. So we're kind of watching on that. Well, yeah, we've had a very unusually dry summer. The winds have been prevailing, and it's been very hot. Very hot. It has anything to do with global warming, though? Donald Trump doesn't think so. Did you know that? Well, you must know that because Trump pulled out, as expected, by the way, out of the Parris Climate Agreement. I don't know what big thought that he had to give, but seriously, the pact doesn't really help us. It hasn't been helping us. And I always think it's always best sometimes to hear where our commander-in-chief is coming from, or others that might have thoughts about this very subject. Well, here is Donald Trump on climate change.
The Paris deal also allows China, the world's largest polluter by far, to increase emissions for more than a dozen years while the United States makes drastic cuts immediately, right now. What's that all about? Why aren't we doing it together? What's that about? Who negotiates our deals?
I can tell you who negotiates the deal, Barack Hussein Obama. I used to think it was the silliest, stupidest thing to know that Mexico, they didn't sign into this. China didn't. They're not doing it. They're the largest polluters on the planet. And by the way, the atmosphere is the atmosphere. They're cooking a hole in it. Mexico's cooking a hole in it, supposedly. And by the way, that hole's been repairing itself despite all of these things going on. Thank God. CFCs and things like that, they've cut down drastically, and there can be many more things that can be done, but realistically, everybody has to be doing their part. America has done plenty and has led through the years with the EPA, and that's kind of spread around the world. Yeah, that was kind of our big thing, our idea, and they had to conform if they wanted to sell cars here, because they're very strict, and thank goodness that we can breathe a little bit easier in our cities. But you go to Mexico City and you go to China, you got to wear masks just about everywhere you go, and it's no fun. Am I a denier of in greenhouse gases and toxins in the air? Am I oblivious to saying that man spills out things in the air it probably shouldn't? I'm sure. There's a lot of people that violate these ordinances, and it's a shame, and they should be prosecuted. But the EPA is not going away. We're not ignoring the fact that people should not be putting things into the atmosphere or in our air. Forget about the atmosphere of the stuff that we breathe, our kids, people. You got to pay attention to, by the way, get a weather app. Usually the Weather Channel will tell you if the EPA actually posts air that is, a little bit more toxic. There's certain days that it'll happen where the air is stagnant, and it's not a good day to go out and jog or run or huff and puff in that stuff. So keep an eye on the environment. But as far as the hole goes, and as far as the depletion of the ozone, well, it's unfounded. According to NASA's own research, According to my research of what NASA said, I sifted through about 150 pages off my printer. I couldn't believe it printed everything. I thought it was a few pages. Big report from NASA on their own website at nasa.gov showing that the Antarctic, this ice is actually thicker, has replenished itself 75% over. All the ice and all that stuff that you saw Al Gore propagating, the inconvenient truth and all that stuff, it's a fable. It's a bunch of hogwash. It's garbage. Complete crap. Boulder Dash, ladies and gentlemen. To break it down for you more concisely, that's exactly what it is. And we used to say in the 90s, as Chuck Harder, the founder of the program, used to say, tree huggers, they cared about more of the trees and the tomatoes. What was it, Ron Hubbard, the Church of Scientology? What would he do? He'd put the stethoscope on a tomato, and he would say that the tomato cries when you cut into it. So this is the kind of science. Now, I live in Florida, so it does get warm here. But if you look back at the years, some years are hotter than others. Just like any other place on the planet, it happens and goes in cycles. Just like the Northeast sometimes get plummeted with tons of snow, and then other years it just doesn't. Goes through phases. And if you look above our planet to other planets, by the way, they have the same phenomenon where their planets actually get hotter too. There's weather on other planets. Yes, the sun gets hotter. And it depends on the proximity of where we are, moving through the universe, et cetera, all these particular things. But you have to factor all of this stuff in. And who this is convenient for those that raise the money for all of this and to build buildings and stuff like that are not environmentally friendly. They're not living in teepees. But it gives people jobs, gives people cause. And they can still fly into their jets and pollute the air even more, and all these accords and places to make themselves all feel important. But meanwhile, their carbon footprint is worse than anyone's. You think Al Gore has used a couple thousand gallons of jet fuel in his lifetime? Just think about it. It's just more of the hypocrisy, and of course, priorities, folks. Be good stewards of the planet, but let's be realists at the same time. And thank goodness, the coal miners, they're looking forward to going back to work, and they are going back to work. All the federal regulations and the limiting greenhouse gas emissions and all this crap that the Obamas, to put all these poor people back to work. By the way, the scrubbers on the chimneys, the stacks at the coal plant, if you learn about coal, it's actually clean. Yeah, people die in the shafts. They know the deal. There's less people that die in those shafts than ever before. They're a lot safer, but there's always going to be accidents that happen. There's accidents everywhere. Give me a break. It's a natural resource. And to be honest with you, I personally prefer coal over nuke. I think it's safer. If you get a nuclear explosion, I know the nukes are safe. I know they've come a long way, but still, it's safer, it's cleaner, and there's an abundance of the stuff. There's an abundance of the stuff. Just don't buy into all the rhetoric. Of course, most of our audience, they listen to us because they know better. But you can tell all your liberal friends, tree huggers, about these things. Of course, they'll have a conniption. They don't want to hear about all this stuff. By the way, the big blast, the massive explosion that ripped through rush hour traffic in the diplomatic area in Kabul, Afghanistan, 80 dead, 350 injured, and I'm just learning this hour that 11 of the dead were Americans, unfortunately. And authorities there say the blast believed to caused by a suicide car bombing, and that bombing was so heavy that more than 30 vehicles were either destroyed or damaged.